My name is Brooke Ellison. I am 28 years old. 6 weeks ago, I found a document in my mother's filing cabinet that changed everything I thought I knew about my family. A whole life insurance policy. Taken out on me when I was 2 years old. Premiums paid for 26 years. Matured value $312,000. Cashed out on March 17, 2024. 3 months before I found it. The signature on the cash out form was mine. Except it was not mine. It was close. The B in Brooke had my general shape. The E in Ellison had the right slant, but the crossbar on the double L was wrong. I crossed my L's low and tight. The person who signed this form crossed them high and loose, the way my mother writes. My mother forged my signature to cash out a $312,000 life insurance policy that I did not know existed. And she used the money to buy my brother Connor a 4-bedroom colonial in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I was 2 years old when that policy was opened. I was 28 when it was stolen. For 26 years, my parents paid premiums on an asset in my name, an asset I owned, an asset they never told me about. And when it matured into $312,000 of real money, they took it. With a forged signature and the casual confidence of people who had been making decisions about my life without me for so long that stealing from me felt like a formality. When I confronted my father, he said 7 words that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. It was our money. Your name was just on the paperwork. Just on the paperwork. As if my name were a placeholder, a formality, a sticky note on someone else's property. But my name was not just on the paperwork. Under New Jersey insurance law, the named insured on a whole life policy is the legal owner of that policy upon reaching the age of majority. That was me, at 18. For 10 years, I had been the legal owner of an asset worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I did not know it existed, because the people who were supposed to love me decided I did not need to know. Let me tell you about the family that made that decision, because the policy is not where the story starts. The policy is where 28 years of invisible inequality finally became visible. Moorestown, New Jersey, Burlington County, a suburb that consistently appears on lists of the best places to live in America. Tree-lined streets, historic homes, a downtown that looks like a movie set for small-town perfection. The Ellison family lived at 44 Chestnut Lane, a 3-bedroom Tudor with a stone facade and ivy climbing the chimney. My father, Patrick Ellison, was a claims adjuster for Atlantic Mutual Insurance. Ironic. A man who spent his career evaluating the legitimacy of insurance claims turned out to be filing a fraudulent one of his own. He made $87,000 a year. Steady, predictable. The kind of salary that supports a comfortable life in a comfortable town, but does not allow for extravagance. My mother, Deborah Ellison, worked as an office manager for a pediatric dental practice. She made $41,000 a year. She kept the household books. She filed the taxes. She managed every financial document in the family with the organizational precision of someone who believed that control over paper was control over reality. Together, they earned $128,000 a year, a solid middle-class income, enough for 1 mortgage, 2 cars, and 1 child's ambitions. Not 2, 1. That child was Connor. Connor Patrick Ellison was born on June 7, 1993, 3 years before me, the firstborn son, the Ellison family's entire emotional and financial investment, wrapped in one person. From the beginning, Connor was the center, not just the center of attention, the center of gravity, the axis around which every family decision rotated. Every budget conversation started with, what does Connor need? Every dinner discussion circled back to Connor's progress. Every holiday was organized around Connor's schedule. He was not a bad person. I want to be clear about that. Connor was not cruel to me. He was not deliberately unkind. He was simply raised in an environment where his needs were oxygen and mine were optional. He breathed freely because the room was built for him. I learned to hold my breath. Connor played varsity baseball. My parents attended every game, every single one. They drove across the state for away games. They bought team merchandise. They hosted the end-of-season banquet at our house, 3 years running. I ran cross-country. My parents came to one meet, my sophomore year. They left at the halfway point because Connor had a team dinner. Connor wanted a car when he turned 16. My parents bought him a used Honda Accord, $4,000. When I turned 16, I asked about a car. My mother said we cannot afford 2 car payments right now, Brooke. You can use the bus. Connor wanted to go to Penn State. Tuition plus room and board was $26,000 a year. My parents took out a Parent Plus loan and paid every dollar of his 4-year education, $104,000. I wanted to go to Rutgers. Tuition was $14,000 a year. My parents said we have already committed to Connor's education. You will need to find your own way. I found my own way. Scholarships covered 60%. I worked 2 part-time jobs for the rest. I graduated with $18,000 in student loan debt. The pattern was invisible to everyone outside the house. From the outside, the Ellisons were a normal family. 2 kids, 2 cars, nice house, church on Easter and Christmas. But inside, the math was always the same. Connor's column was funded. Mine was empty. I accepted this. For 28 years I accepted this because I did not know there was an alternative. When you grow up inside a system, you do not see the system. You just see normal. And my normal was that Connor got things, and I earned things, and nobody questioned the difference. Nobody except my grandmother, Patricia Ellison, my father's mother, 79 years old, sharp-tongued, sharper-eyed, the kind of woman who noticed everything and said approximately 40% of what she noticed. The other 60% she filed away for later. Grandma Pat watched the family dynamics the way a hawk watches a field. She saw the baseball games and the missed cross-country meets. She saw the car and the bus pass. She saw Penn State and the student loans. She said something to me once. I was 22. We were sitting on her back porch in Collingswood drinking iced tea. Brooke, your parents love you, but they love Connor louder. And in families like ours, the loud love gets the money. I did not understand what she meant. Not then. I would understand 6 years later, standing in my mother's home office holding a canceled life insurance policy with a forged signature and a cash-out value of $312,000. The life insurance policy was taken out on November 2nd, 1998. I was 2 years old. The insurer was Garden State Whole Life, a regional company that specialized in permanent life insurance products for families. The policy type was whole life with guaranteed cash value accumulation. Premium payments of $112 per month, $1,234 per year, paid consistently for 26 years. Total premiums paid over the life of the policy, $32,084. Cash surrender value at maturity, $312,000. The growth was due to the policy's investment component. Whole life policies accumulate cash value over time, and a policy opened in 1998 would have benefited from decades of compound growth. My parents had turned $32,000 of premium payments into $312,000 of cash value, and they had done it in my name. Not Connor's, not their own, mine. I did not know this. I did not know any of this until June 14, 2024. A Friday afternoon, I was at my parents' house helping my mother organize files for their upcoming move to a smaller home. They were downsizing. The Tudor on Chestnut Lane was too big for 2 people now that both children were gone. My mother had asked me to sort through the filing cabinet in her home office. Tax returns in one pile, medical records in another, insurance documents in a third. I was pulling folders when I found it, a manila envelope labeled in my mother's handwriting, Brooke, life policy. I opened it expecting to find a small term, life policy, the kind parents sometimes buy for children. A few $1,000s, a token. The first document was the original policy certificate, Garden State Whole Life, policy number GS774291, insured, Brooke Marie Ellison. Date of issue, November 2nd, 1998. Face value, $50,000. The second document was a cash value statement dated January 2024. Current cash surrender value, $312,417. $312,000. I read it 3 times. The number did not change. The third document was the surrender form, dated March 17, 2024, 3 months ago. The form authorized the full surrender of the policy and the disbursement of the cash value to the policy owner. The signature line read Brooke Marie Ellison, but the signature was not mine. I look at signatures every day. I compare documents for inconsistencies as part of my professional routine. I know what my own handwriting looks like the way a musician knows their own voice. That signature was not my voice. The crossbar on the L, the loop on the B, the angle of the E. Small differences that a bank teller or a notary might miss, but that I saw immediately because I had been writing my name for 25 years, and I knew every curve and every line. My mother had signed my name on a surrender form for $312,000. I stood in her office, holding the document. My hands were steady. My heart was not. I pulled the disbursement record from the envelope. A cashier's check from Garden State Whole Life, $312,417, made out to Brooke Marie Ellison. A second document showed the check deposited into an account at TD Bank. Account number visible. Account holder name visible. They had deposited a check made out to me into their joint account, which meant they had also forged my endorsement on the back of the check. 2 forgeries. The surrender form. The check endorsement. Both federal crimes. Both committed by my parents. Both used to steal $312,000 from their own daughter. I photographed every document. Both sides. Every page. Uploaded them to my cloud storage. Made backup copies. Then I put the originals back in the envelope, placed the envelope back in the filing cabinet, and closed the drawer. My mother was in the kitchen making dinner. She called out as I passed. "Find anything interesting in those files?" "Just tax returns," I said. My voice did not shake. "Nothing interesting." I drove home. I sat in my car in the parking lot of my apartment building for 20 minutes. Then I called my grandmother. "Grandma Pat, I need to ask you something. Did you know my parents took out a life insurance policy on me?" Silence. Then a long exhale. "I was wondering when you would find out about that." I drove to Grandma Pat's house in Collingswood that evening. She lived alone in a small rancher that smelled like lavender and lemon furniture polish. She was waiting for me on the porch with 2 glasses of iced tea and an expression that told me she had been carrying this secret for a very long time. "Sit down, Brooke." I sat. "Your grandfather started that policy, not your parents. Raymond took it out when you were 2 years old. He paid the first 3 years of premiums himself before he got sick. When he died, your father took over the payments. Grandpa Ray? He started one for you and one for Connor. Identical policies. Same amount. Same terms. He wanted both of his grandchildren to have a financial foundation when they grew up. Both of us? Connor had a policy too?" "Had. Your parents cashed out Connor's policy when he turned 21. Used it for his Penn State tuition. That policy was worth about $87,000 at the time." I stared at her. "They cashed out Connor's at 21. And they cashed out mine at 28. Yes, but there is a difference. Connor knew about his. They told him. He signed the surrender form himself. They asked his permission. They did not ask mine. No, they did not." "How do you know all of this?" "Because Raymond told me about the policies before he died. He made me promise to keep an eye on them." She took a sip of her tea. "When your parents cashed out Connor's policy, I asked your father about yours. He told me they were keeping it for your future. He said it was growing, and they would give it to you when the time was right. The time was never right. No, the time was right for them. When it matured and the value hit $300,000, suddenly the time was right to buy Connor a house." "How did you find out about the house?" "Your mother told me 2 months ago, casually, over lunch. She said they had helped Connor with a down payment. I asked where the money came from. She said they had been saving, but they had not been saving. They had been waiting for my policy to mature so they could cash it out and hand it to their son." Grandma Pat set down her glass. "Brooke, your grandfather left those policies so both of his grandchildren would have something. Equal amounts. Equal opportunity. What your parents did with Connor's was, at least, transparent. What they did with yours was theft." She reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Old, yellowed, worn at the creases. "This is a letter your grandfather wrote before he died. He gave it to me and said, 'Give this to Brooke if Patrick ever does something stupid.'" She handed it to me. "My dear Brooke, if you are reading this, then something has happened with the policy I started for you. I set it up because I wanted you to have a choice about your future that nobody else controlled. If that choice has been taken from you, I want you to know 2 things. First, the policy is yours, legally and morally, no matter what anyone tells you. Second, do not let anyone make you feel guilty for wanting what is rightfully yours. Not your parents, not your brother, not anyone. Love you, sweetheart. Fight for yourself, nobody else in this family will. Grandpa Ray. I folded the letter carefully and held it against my chest. A letter from a dead man who had seen his own son clearly enough to know that someday his granddaughter would need protection from him. Does Dad know about this letter? No, nobody does. Your grandfather gave it to me privately. He said Patrick would destroy it if he found it. Grandma Pat leaned forward. What are you going to do? I looked at her, this fierce, patient woman who had kept a secret for 26 years because a dying man asked her to. I am going to get my money back. And then I am going to make sure they can never do this to anyone again. She nodded. Good. Your grandfather would approve. She paused. But, Brooke, be smart about this. Your parents are not stupid. They are just selfish. And selfish people fight hardest when you threaten what they have taken. I know, I said. That is why I am not going to fight them. I am going to let the insurance company do it. Monday morning, June 17th, 2024. I called Garden State Whole Life's corporate headquarters at 9:01 a.m. I was transferred 4 times before reaching the Special Investigations Unit, a department I did not know existed until that morning. A department that handles one specific category of claims: fraud. The investigator assigned to my case was a woman named Diane Prescott, 15 years, with the company, former state police detective. The kind of voice that communicated zero tolerance for nonsense and unlimited patience for evidence. I explained the situation, the policy I did not know about, the surrender form I did not sign, the check deposited into my parents' account, the forged signature. She listened without interrupting. Then she asked one question. Do you have photographs of the surrender form? I sent her everything. The original policy, the cash value statement, the surrender form with the forged signature, the disbursement record, the deposit record showing the check going into my parents' account, my grandfather's letter, a sample of my actual signature for comparison. Diane reviewed the materials for 2 days. She called me on Wednesday. Miss Ellison, I have compared the signature on the surrender form with the signature samples you provided. I am not a handwriting expert, but in my professional assessment, these signatures were not written by the same person. She paused. We are opening a formal fraud investigation. This will involve a forensic handwriting analysis, a review of all account records, and interviews with the parties involved. I need to inform you that if fraud is confirmed, this matter will be referred to the New Jersey Department of Banking and Insurance, and, potentially, to law enforcement. I understand. Are you prepared for that? These are your parents. I was prepared the moment I found the forged signature. Diane's investigation moved quickly. Within 2 weeks, she had retained a forensic handwriting expert named Dr. Stephen Hale from a consulting firm in Trenton. He examined the surrender form, the check endorsement, and 12 samples of my authentic signature. His report was 31 pages long. His conclusion was one sentence. The signatures on the policy surrender form and the check endorsement were not produced by the stated signatory and are consistent with the handwriting characteristics of a different individual. A different individual. My mother. The woman who had taught me to write my name when I was 5 years old had used that knowledge to forge it when I was 28. Diane also pulled the bank records for my parents' TD bank account. The $312,000 deposit on March 21, 2020.4, 4 days after the surrender form was processed. And then the withdrawals. March 25th, wire transfer, $289,000 to Camden County Title Company for the purchase of a residential property at 19 Oakwood Drive, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Connor's house. The remaining $23,000 was withdrawn in cash and smaller transfers over the following 2 weeks. Shopping, dining, a furniture store, a landscaping company. They had not just bought Connor a house with my money. They had furnished it, landscaped it, moved him in. Diane compiled her findings into an investigation report and submitted it to Garden State Whole Life's legal department on July 8th. On July 15th, the company sent a letter to my parents. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Ellison, our Special Investigations Unit has completed a review of the surrender and disbursement of policy GS 774291. Our investigation has determined that the surrender form and check endorsement were not executed by the policy owner, Brooke Marie Ellison. This constitutes insurance fraud under New Jersey Statute 2C:21-4.6. We are referring this matter to the New Jersey Department of Banking and Insurance and to the Burlington County Prosecutor's Office. My mother called me 47 minutes after the letter was delivered. I know this because I checked the delivery timestamp on the return receipt against her call log. Brooke. Her voice was vibrating, a frequency I had never heard from her before. Not anger, not sadness, fear. What did you do? I reported a fraud. Because that is what it was. We need to talk about this. As a family, the insurance company does not consider this a family matter. Neither does the prosecutor's office. Silence. Your father is going to be devastated. Dad forged my check endorsement. Or you did. Either way, someone in this family committed a federal crime to steal $312,000 from me. Devastation is the appropriate response. She hung up. She did not call back. The Burlington County Prosecutor's Office assigned the case to an assistant prosecutor named Michael Renna. He was 38, former public defender turned prosecutor, the kind of attorney who had seen enough fraud to recognize it immediately and enough family dysfunction to understand the human cost. He called me on August 1st. Miss Ellison, I have reviewed the referral from Garden State Whole Life and the investigation report from their Special Investigations Unit. This is a straightforward case of insurance fraud and forgery, but I want to make sure you understand the implications before we proceed. I understand your parents could face felony charges, forgery in the second degree, theft by deception, combined maximum sentences of 10 to 15 years. I understand. And you want to proceed. I paused, not because I was unsure, because I wanted to give the moment the weight it deserved. Mr. Renna? My parents stole $312,000 from me. They forged my signature twice. They bought my brother a house with money that legally belonged to me. And when I found out, my father told me my name was just on the paperwork. I am not the one who made this a criminal matter. They did. I am simply refusing to be silent about it. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something I did not expect. For what it is worth, Miss Ellison, you are not the first person to sit where you are sitting. Parents stealing from children through insurance fraud is more common than people think. Most victims never report it because it is family. You are doing the right thing, and it takes more courage than most people have. Michael Renna convened a grand jury on September 4, 2024. The evidence was presented over 2 days: the forensic handwriting analysis, the bank records, the property purchase records, the insurance company's investigation report. The grand jury returned indictments on September 12th. Patrick James Ellison, 2 counts of forgery in the second degree, 1 count of insurance fraud in the third degree, 1 count of theft by deception. Deborah K. Ellison, 2 counts of forgery in the second degree, 1 count of insurance fraud in the third degree, 1 count of theft by deception, 1 count of conspiracy. My mother got the additional conspiracy charge because the handwriting analysis matched the forged signatures to her hand. She was the forger. My father was the beneficiary. They were arrested on September 15th, surrendered voluntarily at the Burlington County Courthouse, processed, fingerprinted, released on their own recognizance pending trial. Connor called me that evening, the first time we had spoken since I found the policy. Brooke. His voice was strained. I did not know about the forgery, about any of it. Mom and Dad told me they had savings, an investment that had matured. They said they wanted to help me buy a house, an investment that had matured. They were not even creative with the lie. Did you ask where $312,000 came from? Long pause. No, I did not ask. I should have, but they are Mom and Dad. I trusted them. So did I. And look where it got me. Silence. The house. Brooke. He swallowed. It is your money. The house was bought with your money. What do you want me to do? That is between you and the prosecutor, and between you and your own conscience. I am not going to tell you what to do with the house you are living in, but you need to understand that the money that bought it was mine, and I intend to get it back. He did not argue. He did not beg. He just said, I understand, and hung up. I sat in my apartment that night, the small 1-bedroom in Haddonfield that I rented for $1,100 a month. The one I had furnished with secondhand furniture and decorated with prints from the dollar store, 7 miles away, my brother was sitting in a 4-bedroom colonial that my parents had bought him. With my money. $312,000 that my grandfather had started building when I was 2 years old, so that I would have a choice about my future. That choice had been stolen, and I was going to get it back. The trial was scheduled for January 14, 2025. Burlington County Superior Court. Judge Catherine Albright presiding. In the 4 months between the indictments and the trial, my parents' world contracted steadily. Not with dramatic explosions, but with the slow, quiet erosion of everything they had spent decades building. My father's employer, Atlantic Mutual Insurance, placed him on administrative leave within a week of the arrest. An insurance company cannot employ a man charged with insurance fraud. The optics alone would have been devastating. The liability was worse. His supervisor called it a temporary measure pending resolution of the legal matter. Everyone knew it was permanent. Patrick Ellison had spent 29 years adjusting claims for Atlantic Mutual. He would never adjust another one. My mother's dental practice fired her outright. The managing dentist, a woman named Dr. Shapiro, who my mother had worked for 11 years, called her into the office on a Monday morning and said, "Deborah, I am sorry, but we cannot have someone facing fraud charges handling our patient billing. It is a liability issue." Their combined income dropped from $128,000 to zero in less than 2 weeks. They retained an attorney, a man named Philip Dunn from a firm in Mount Laurel. He was expensive, $350 an hour. My parents took out a home equity line of credit against the tutor on Chestnut Lane to pay his fees. Philip Dunn's strategy was predictable. He argued that my parents believed they had the right to cash out the policy because they had paid the premiums for 26 years. He argued that the surrender was made in good faith under the assumption of parental authority. He argued that the forged signature was a procedural shortcut, not a criminal act. Michael Renna dismantled every argument before the trial even began. In his pre-trial brief, he cited New Jersey insurance law, which clearly states that the named insured on a whole life policy is the legal owner of that policy upon reaching the age of majority. My parents' premium payments did not give them ownership any more than paying rent gives a tenant ownership of the building. He cited the forgery statute, which makes no exception for family relationships. A forged signature is a forged signature whether the forger is a stranger or a mother. And he cited a precedent case from 2019 in which New Jersey parents were convicted of cashing out their adult child's life insurance policy without consent. The judge in that case had specifically noted that parental authority does not extend to the financial assets of adult children regardless of who funded the original premiums. Philip Dunn read the pretrial brief and called my parents that evening. I know this because Grandma Pat told me. She had maintained contact with my father throughout the process, not out of loyalty to his actions, but out of a grandmother's unwillingness to completely abandon her son even when he had done something indefensible. According to Grandma Pat, the conversation was brief. Philip Dunn told my parents that the case against them was overwhelming. The forensic handwriting analysis was conclusive. The bank records were indisputable. The insurance company's fraud investigation was thorough and damning. He recommended they negotiate a plea deal. My father refused. He still believed he was right. He still believed that 26 years of premium payments entitled him to the cash value. He still believed that his daughter's name was just on the paperwork. My mother disagreed. According to Grandma Pat, she argued with my father for 3 hours that night. She wanted to plead guilty, pay restitution, and end the nightmare. She understood what my father refused to see. They were going to lose. They argued for a week. Then Philip Dunn called Michael Renna and said his clients would consider a plea arrangement. The proposed deal was as follows. Both parents would plead guilty to 1 count of forgery and 1 count of theft by deception. The insurance fraud charge would be dropped. The conspiracy charge against my mother would be dropped. Sentencing would be at the judge's discretion, but the prosecution would recommend probation with full restitution. Full restitution, $312,417, plus statutory interest, plus the insurance company's investigation costs of $18,000. Total restitution, $341,000. Michael Renna called me before responding to the offer. Miss Ellison, the plea arrangement requires your input as the victim. The restitution amount is $341,000. Do you want to accept this or push for trial? I thought about it. Not for long. I want full restitution. I want the guilty pleas on record. And I want one additional condition. I want the house. The house in Cherry Hill. The one they bought Connor with my money. I want it transferred to my name or sold and the proceeds applied to the restitution. Michael was quiet for a moment. That is aggressive but legally justified since the property was purchased with stolen funds. I will present it. Philip Dunn objected, predictably. The house was in Connor's name. Connor was not a defendant. Forcing the sale of his home was punitive and disproportionate. Michael's response was surgical. The home was purchased with proceeds of a crime. Under New Jersey's criminal forfeiture statute, property acquired through criminal activity is subject to seizure, regardless of the current title holder. Connor Ellison's home was funded entirely by stolen insurance proceeds. The title is irrelevant. Philip Dunn went back to my parents. They argued for another week. Then they agreed. The plea hearing was set for January 14th. The same date the trial would have started. Same courtroom, same judge. Different ending. January 14th, 2025. Burlington County Superior Court. Courtroom 2A. Judge Catherine Albright presiding. I arrived at 8:30. Alone. Thomas offered to come, but I told him this was something I needed to do by myself. Not because I was strong enough to face it alone, but because I needed to prove to myself that I could stand in a room with my parents and not shrink. My parents arrived at 8:45 with Philip Dunn. My father wore a charcoal suit I had seen him wear to church every Easter for 15 years. My mother wore a navy dress. No jewelry. No makeup that I could see. She looked 10 years older than she had 6 months ago. Connor was in the gallery. He sat alone in the third row. He did not look at my parents. He did not look at me. He looked at the floor. Grandma Pat was there, back row, arms crossed, watching her son walk to the defense table the way a mother watches a child walk into traffic, unable to stop it, unable to look away. Judge Albright reviewed the plea agreements. She asked each parent individually if they understood the charges, the consequences, and the rights they were waiving. Each said yes, quietly, without looking up. Then she asked me if I wished to make a statement. I stood. Your Honor, I did not know this policy existed until 6 months ago. For 26 years, my parents paid premiums on an asset in my name and never told me. When it matured, they cashed it out, forged my signature, and used every dollar to buy my brother a house. I paused. When I confronted my father, he told me my name was just on the paperwork, as if I were a placeholder, a formality, a means to an end. I looked at my parents. I was not a placeholder. I was your daughter. And that policy was the only financial investment anyone in this family ever made in my future. And you stole it. Judge Albright listened. She removed her glasses. And Mrs. Ellison, I have reviewed the evidence, the plea agreements, and the victim's statement. I want to be direct with you. She looked at my father. Mr. Ellison, you spent 29 years working in insurance. You understand policy ownership. You understand beneficiary designations. You understand that the named insured on a whole life policy is the legal owner. You knew exactly what you were doing when you cashed out your daughter's policy. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a calculated theft disguised as parental authority. My father said nothing. She turned to my mother. Mrs. Ellison, the forensic evidence confirms that you forged your daughter's signature. Twice, on a surrender form and on a check endorsement. You used the handwriting you taught her as a child to steal from her as an adult. My mother started crying. Silent tears, the real kind. The court accepts the plea agreements. Sentencing is as follows. Patrick Ellison, 3 years supervised probation, 200 hours of community service, full restitution of $341,000, permanent felony record. 3 years supervised probation, 150 hours of community service. Additionally, the court orders the transfer or sale of the property at 19 Oakwood Drive, Cherry Hill, purchased with the stolen insurance proceeds. If the property is not voluntarily transferred or sold within 90 days, the court will order a forced sale with proceeds applied to the restitution balance. She looked at me. Miss Ellison, the court recognizes the restraint and courage you have shown. You did not seek revenge. You sought accountability. And you have it. The gavel came down. The house in Cherry Hill sold on April 3, 2025, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms. The colonial that my parents had furnished and landscaped with $312,000 of my stolen insurance money. Sale price, $328,000. After closing costs and fees, the net proceeds were $309,000. Applied directly to the restitution balance. Remaining restitution owed $32,000. My parents were placed on a structured payment plan, $800 per month. They would be paying for the next 3.5 years. Connor moved out of the Cherry Hill house 2 weeks before the closing. He rented a one-bedroom apartment in Pennsauken. $900 a month. He did not complain. He did not blame me. He called me once after the move. I found an apartment. It is small, but it is mine. Actually mine. Paid for with my own money. It was the most self-aware thing my brother had ever said. The insurance company took its own action separately from the criminal case. Garden State Whole Life filed a civil complaint against my parents for fraud and breach of contract. They demanded repayment of their investigation costs plus damages. The civil case settled in March. My parents paid $18,000 to the insurance company, money they borrowed against the equity remaining in their Chestnut Lane home. The Tudor with the ivy-covered chimney was now carrying 2 liens: the home equity line for the legal fees and the insurance settlement. My father found a job in April. Not in insurance. No insurance company would hire him with a fraud conviction. He got a position as an office manager at a plumbing supply company in Burlington. $41,000 a year, less than half of what he had earned at Atlantic Mutual. My mother found part-time work at a bookstore. $14 an hour, 20 hours a week. She told Grandma Pat it was humbling but honest and she was grateful for it. Grandma Pat relayed this to me during one of our Sunday visits. She said it without judgment, without agenda. Just information from a woman who loved all of the broken people in her family and was trying to hold the pieces together without cutting herself. Your father asked about you last week, Grandma Pat said one afternoon in May. What did he say? He asked if you were okay? That is all. That is all. But Brooke, for your father, asking if someone else is okay is a big step. He has spent his whole life assuming everyone is fine, because it is easier than caring. She sipped her iced tea. He is not fine. He knows what he did. He does not have the words for it yet, but he knows. I did not respond. Some wounds need more than words. They need time and evidence and the slow, painful process of a person learning to see someone they spent decades overlooking. My mother wrote me a letter in June. Handwritten, 3 pages. Not forged this time. Her own words in her own hand for the first time in a way that mattered. She wrote about the night they opened the policy, how my grandfather Raymond had called it an investment in Brooke's independence, how my father had taken over the premiums after Raymond died, and gradually begun to see the policy not as mine but as theirs. How the line between stewardship and ownership blurred over 26 years until they convinced themselves that paying the premiums entitled them to the proceeds. She wrote about the moment she signed my name on the surrender form. How her hand shook, how she almost stopped, how she told herself it was not really stealing because the money was going to family. She wrote the sentence that mattered most at the bottom of the 3rd page. It was stealing. I knew it when I signed your name. I knew it when I deposited the check. I knew it every time I drove past Connor's house and saw the lawn I landscaped with your money. I knew it and I did it anyway, because it was easier to steal from the daughter who would not make a scene than to tell the son who expected everything that he could not have it. I read that sentence 7 times. Then I folded the letter and put it in a box with my grandfather's letter. 2 letters. One from a man who saw the theft coming and tried to protect me. One from the woman who committed it and finally admitted why. It has been a year since I found that policy in my mother's filing cabinet. I am 29 years old. I live in Haddonfield, New Jersey, in the same one-bedroom apartment I rented when I was 25. The same second-hand furniture, the same dollar store prints on the walls, but something is different now. Not the apartment. Me. I am different because I know my own value. Not because a court affirmed it or an insurance company investigated it or a judge ordered restitution. I know my value because I stood in a room with the 2 people who had undervalued me my entire life. And I said, this is mine, and I did not blink. The restitution payments arrive every month. $800, automatically transferred. I do not spend them. I put them into a savings account I opened at a credit union in Collingswood, the same credit union where my grandfather Raymond had his accounts. The same branch where he probably sat across from a banker and said, I want to start a life insurance policy for my granddaughter. Connor and I talk now. Not often. Not easily. But honestly, he is learning what it feels like to earn things instead of receiving them. It is a painful education, but he is showing up for it. Last month, he sent me a check for $2,000, a voluntary payment toward the restitution his parents owe. He did not have to do that. Nobody asked him to. He just said I benefited from what they did, and I want to be part of making it right. I cashed the check, not because I needed the money, because accepting it meant accepting that my brother was trying to change, and people who are trying deserve the chance to prove it. Grandma Pat turned 80 last month. I threw her a party in her backyard. 12 people. Her neighbors, her book club friends, me and Thomas. Connor came. He brought flowers and a card he had written himself. It was awkward and imperfect, and it was the first family gathering in years that did not feel like a performance. My parents were not there. We have not reached that point. I do not know if we ever will. My mother's letter was a beginning, but beginnings are not the same as arrivals. They are just the first step on a road that might be very long or might lead nowhere at all. I am okay with that uncertainty. I spent 28 years living in the certainty of my family's hierarchy, knowing exactly where I stood, which was behind Connor and beneath everyone else's priorities. That certainty was comfortable in the way that cages are comfortable. You know exactly how much space you have, and you never have to wonder what is outside. Now I am outside, and it is bigger and messier and harder than the cage ever was. But it is mine. My grandfather started a life insurance policy when I was 2 years old because he wanted me to have a choice, a financial foundation, a starting point that nobody could take away. My parents took it anyway. They cashed out my future and poured it into someone else's present. And when I found out, they told me my name was just on the paperwork. But my name was never just on the paperwork. My name was the whole point. Raymond Ellison did not start that policy for his son or his daughter-in-law or his grandson. He started it for me, Brooke Marie Ellison, his granddaughter, the one he saw when nobody else was looking. If you are still listening, let me leave you with this. You are not a line item on your family's budget. You are not a resource to be allocated. You are not a signature to be borrowed when someone needs access to something that does not belong to them. You are a person with rights, with value, with a name that means something on every document it appears on. And anyone who tells you that your name is just on the paperwork is telling you exactly who they are. Believe them, and then protect yourself, because the people who love you will never need to forge your signature. They will never need to take what is yours without asking. They will never look at an asset in your name and see their own opportunity. The people who love you will do what my grandfather did. They will build something in your name. They will protect it, and they will trust you to use it wisely when the time comes. That is love. Everything else is theft with a family discount. Thank you for listening to my story. If it meant something to you, if it reminded you that your name is sacred and your rights are real, share it. Like, subscribe. Leave a comment telling me what you would have done. Because everyone deserves to know that their name on the paperwork is not a formality. It is a promise, and some promises are worth fighting for.